here, let me know that you're here, who you are. I'm kind of just messing around for a minute while everyone comes in. I also set up a pedal board like in 5 minutes. So, let me know if you can hear everything. Hey, Dave. This is actually this week's new backing track on the channel. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I'll post the link. Oops. If you guys are interested in this one, it's just an E7. It's one of these single chord backing track deals. And it's cool for doing all of your E7 stuff. You can play your pentatonic scale over it, right? Because it's the dominant chord, dominant scale. You can play major pentatonic. You can play minor pentatonic into play the blues scale. You just play a combination of stuff. So anyway, how's the levels going? Levels good? I literally did not prepare very well for today, so I apologize if things are a little funky. So, and probably in a few minutes, or a minute or two, I'm just gonna get started anyway. Hey, Dave, do you have any questions? If you are still indeed here. Cool. One of the things that I did this week, actually this started a couple weeks ago, is I typically use Gibson Vintage reissue strings. And I love them, and I've used them for about 20 years because I like the fact that they're pure nickel. They seem to last me a really long time. And I got used to them, you know. I think they sound good. I'm not really good with nickel wrap or stainless steel or any of the other kinds of string formulations because I like my guitars to be a little darker sounding. They're all kind of bright. I mean, yeah, that's still pretty bright. Actually, I'm going through my clone thing here, but still. But they're $13 a pack, and they're really hard to get a hold of. So what I've been doing is I've been looking for other pure nickel string sets, and I'm trying the D'Addario. I guess they're just called pure nickel, but the weird thing is that they're even though they're 10 gauge strings, instead of going 10 to 46 like other string sets do, they go 10 to 45, so they're a little lighter on the bottom, and it's actually kind of cool. I didn't think I would like it that much. But it's kind of easier to play, but it's still not. I still have the resistance on the higher string. The one is that I need to adjust the truss rods on a couple of my guitars. You can hear the guitar nice, right? I actually got all of my new pedals except for the wah pedal thrown up here on this board. Let's see if I can give you guys a quick tour while we're waiting for people before I start the lesson here. Okay, so there's my shoes. That's not where the... Okay, so you pretty much see it. Okay. So what I've got going on right now is a little bit of spring reverb out of the H9. I'm playing through my Sir Badger 30. I got a slight delay. I think we get rid of this guy. Don't even hear the delay. Okay. That's kind of the delay, a little bit louder. Apparently I need to reprogram these things. I literally tore my pedal board apart a couple weeks ago. And a couple of like phaser, chorus. I'm gonna use these for this week's lesson. We're gonna talk about adapting piano songs to guitar format. So that's part of why we're doing this with the effects. But also, like, hey, you know what? Like, I've got a Sir. I'm really happy. That's the Sir Riot distortion pedal. It's a little bright on this guitar, but I usually don't get along well with distortion pedals, so I'm happy with that. And the other guys here, pretty much you guys have heard. That's the Archer clone. The Dude. Oops, which is set really super bright for some reason. Ah, that's why. Knobs get knocked out. This has been my lead sound for like the last year or so. I just got the Blue Note, which I really like that sound. It's funny because you compare that to the Archer, it doesn't seem like that much of a difference. But it actually does kind of make me happy for like bluesy lead stuff. Even like that, you know, that kind of stuff. I like it better because it's a little full thread. It sounds more like a small amp being cranked up. And then the 45 caliber, which is basically like a JTM 45 Marshall. Alright. So anyway, so those are the usual suspects for today. Okay, I got a handful of you guys. You guys ready to do some talking about some Queen here? Some guitar arranging. Let me just turn this other deal around. All right, and some coffee. All right, so here is the deal. I was going to do Tempted by Squeeze on Wednesday, and ended up not doing the live stream then. And I've got that one still lined up on my YouTube channel for next Wednesday. I just bumped it back a week. So I thought we'd do something a little bit different. And I think this is a song I've never played before. I downloaded not the guitar version of the sheet music, but I found on musicnotes.com, and I'm going to put the link here for you guys. Oh, where'd it go? This is super awesome. Hang on a second. Here it is. Okay, so here's the link to the music that I'm using. Or going to be using here in a second. Those socks are fleece lined. I hate wearing shoes when I'm out here. So, okay, so there's the link to the music if you guys wanted to download and buy it. The cool thing about Music Notes is that you can actually have it transpose it into different keys, which is going to kind of come up here in a minute. Now I got this, and I'm trying something here. Hopefully we're not going to get some sort of copyright strike, but I'm going to teach the song. I'll have the sheet music on my iPad. I'm not going to play the original song, which let me throw up the original song here. Here's the official video, which we're not going to play. I always wonder, like, who are the 45,000 people that gives this song a down thumb. Anyway, okay, so there's the song we're working on. If we take a look at the music here, you'll see that like all of these things, this is the kind of thing that I grew up with, which was no guitar tab and literally just a bunch of chords that some guitar player or some piano player looked up in a chord book and said, hey, you know what, this is how we're going to teach the guitar players how to play it, because my book of 10,000 chords has this in it. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if I was to play that. Can anybody find me? How it goes. Somebody to love. Right. That's not really. I'm not really in love with those chords, but yeah, it's a good starting point. Now, there's two ways to do this, and I think maybe the first way is let's make it super easy, and we're gonna look at this using capos. And you say, well, you know, I don't know an open A flat chord or any of these other chords here. So we're gonna kind of mark our way through this for a second. So the first way to do this is to look at like, hey, I've got this first chord. We're in the key of A flat. It's obvious. We start on A flat, we end on A flat. And that's not really a great guitar key to work in. Right, but one thing that we can do is we can say, hey, you know what? If we lower this a half step, it's in G. Right, so let's just transpose this really quick. G, E flat over G. If we go down a half step, we're just going down a half step. D over F sharp. F minor becomes E minor. D flat major 9 becomes C. The triangle means major 9. We'll talk about that in a second. This becomes D7 sus. This guy becomes C. We're just going down a half step. D and then G. Right, so if I put my capo, I'm switching guitars because where'd Mr. Capo go? So A flat is a half step up from G. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the nut up a half step. And we're doing this so that's in the original key right now. Obviously, I mean, we could if we wanted to. Can anybody find me somebody? There's the C, there's the D7, there's the G. Right, so that's the first way you can kind of work it. And there's two capo things that you can do with this, right? Now, if you want to play it in the original key, we're just bringing it up. You know, we had to move it down to transpose it one step or half step. So we're just going to bring the nut up and then hopefully be in tune. The reason why I pulled this, oops, hang on a second. Anybody find me somebody to love? Okay, the tuning's going to be atrocious on this guitar. Literally, these are old strings. Terry, you ask, why does it make a difference? Why does which particularly make a difference? Part of it, like, because the lag between like when you post things and when I notice them, and also like when things actually make it out. Sometimes I'm a little confused about the questions, right? But this gives you a pretty cool sound. Totally out of tune, which is a big ass bummer. Perhaps I should have tuned this with a capo. But then you can adapt this song Well, there's a couple reasons why we wouldn't play an A flat. One of them is the idea that maybe you don't sing as high as Freddie Mercury, or maybe you don't have a capo handy. I mean, sometimes literally it just comes down to the fact that you didn't bring a capo to a gig, and you need to be able to kind of adapt this on the fly. All right, and usually dropping a song like this a half step probably is in everybody's best interest anyway. But it's a thought, and we'll talk about the other option on the capo thing here in a second, right? So that's the beginning part. Now you could do it real strummy. We could bring some of the sounds in here. The thing about keyboard instruments versus guitar is that they occupy space differently. Especially like electric keyboards and things like that. I really like, if I'm playing a piano sound, trying to find like so this is a phaser sound. Anybody for me? Even if it's a really slight sound, then that gives you a little bit of movement and a little bit of spatial difference. All right, if I get to the where is the vocal starts? Each morning I get up, I die a little, can barely stand on my feet. All right, that versus without this stuff. Right, that just kind of sits there. It kind of needs a little bit of sauce. So part of my thing when I'm doing piano songs is I usually give them a little bit of modulation for movement, even like chorus. Chorus is like my least favorite thing in the world to do with this. But I was watching there was a Queen and Adam Lambert documentary on Netflix last night, and they were playing this song. And it was kind of funny because there was one part where Brian May was literally I think it was just him playing all of this on guitar, and he had a pretty affected sound. It was interesting, but he was occupying the space that the piano would take. So yeah, it could be you choose the key typically to make the vocalist sound the best that they can sound. Right. Which on most other instruments isn't that big of a deal. On guitar, it does become kind of a big deal because things work certain ways on guitar that they don't work on other instruments. You know, having the ability to play open strings in your part is one of the textures that's real important with this instrument. Also being able to fill space and give because think about modulation. To me, modulation is just like vibrato on a single note. All right, typically, people say chorus is shimmery, or it's got a swoosh to it with the phaser or the flanger. Right, there's movement in the sound settling, and that occupies space pretty cool. If you notice from a lot of my backing tracks, I tend to play. It's funny because I tend to play more affected guitars. I just like how they fill space. And I don't do it as much live, but on recordings I do quite a bit, unless it's this sort of thing. So that's the thing. There's some flanger. I'm not really as big of a fan of the flanger sound for this sort of thing, but it's kind of cool to go through the effects and see what you like. Typically for me, it's phaser. So that's kind of the first thing. So that's one way of doing it is we can bump this up. From A flat, we can put it down a half step into G, and then use it with the open chords that we find in G, using the capo, or just putting it in another key. But say, maybe we really got to change key. Then you can change key easily too. That's you get to certain keys, and then suddenly it's not quite so easy. But let's take a look at the fact that A flat is also, let's bring our music back here. It's also a half step away from the key of A. So let's erase these guys. Maybe we'll this to make it easier for you guys to see. Oops. All right, so if we do this in A flat, we're bringing everything up a half step. All right, so in this case, we've got A, and then it's E natural over G sharp, F sharp minor, D major 9, E 7, sus, and we've got D, E, and A. All right. Now if we take that, if we just do it in the key of A without the capo, that gives us kind of some cool, actually, it's a lot harder without my MIDI switcher. I can go A, E over G sharp, F sharp minor, and then either the D, and then E, you know, you got E major, you play E7, sus 4 like this, which would be pretty cool. It's just like your A7 but moved up a fret. Let's just turn this thing off. All right, so we got, can anybody find me? There's a D major 7. Find me somebody to love. All right, so you know you've got a couple options here already in terms of the timbre and how you want to fill space. All right, and in this one, if you wanted to do more of a rock version of this song, that sounds terrible. Let's not do that. Actually, let's do it with the... So you get to the verse. Each morning I sit up and die a little, stand on my feet. All right. So the timbrally you get some options too. I think Oscar's done this a few times. Oscar's been around the block. Anyway, so I mean, those are a couple options, and then you can always, if you wanted to do this in A flat, no, it doesn't work that direction, but it gives you a different sound. So working your way through, whoops, no, shit. Sorry, I just hit. Command 1 is the going back to this camera, and Command Q on Apple is quit, and I nearly quit on you guys, so sorry about that. But that gives you a couple options in terms of like where you're gonna play, or how to look at like how you're gonna take a song that's not necessarily a guitar riff song and turn it into something that's gonna work on a guitar in a playing situation with a rhythm section. All right. I hate saying that I rely on effects a lot for this sort of thing, but you know, ketchup makes even the worst food go down sometimes. So, or hot sauce, or whatever you want to look at it. All right, so that's part. So let's look at this song. Get rid of the distortion here. The main part of the song, and we're gonna do it as if I'm not using a capo here, just because I typically don't use capos on gigs, and I don't do other tunings because they're kind of a pain in the butt for me. I just don't like managing. I don't like bringing extra guitars except for a backup that's set up, you know, identically as what we're doing. All right, so if I was playing this on a gig, I would probably try and do something like that with these chords. Now the chords, you know, it's okay to play bar chords. Whenever there's a chord, like right here we've got, E flat with the G in the bass. The bass player is going to play that G. But I like adding that into my voicing. I want you to hear this stuff, right? Even if I'm playing through, man, I gotta remember which is which here. Okay, so I'll play like A flat, E over G, and then the F minor. You guys hear my dogs? Yeah, I agree, Dave, because there's a lot of space in the guitar parts. Queen, like especially later Queen, it's a little tricky to kind of pull off, and really like on gigs, the only songs that I end up playing, the only song I really play from Queen on a regular basis is Crazy Little Thing Called Love, which is essentially kind of a rockabilly kind of like that sort of deal, and it doesn't have it's the least Brian May, I think, of the Queen songs, which is why we're able to pull it off in the group I play it in. So I'm really bad personally about like it's funny, like I see all these guys with their pedal boards, speaking of effects, where they've got like a million pedals and they've always got these hugely ambient sounds, and that stuff gets a little confusing on the gigs that I play, because they tend to be loud gigs in small spaces and it just turns into a wash. But the reality is having some kind of depth to your sound is important. I've always got some kind of usually a tape delay kind of sound, kind of replacing my reverb. And I've just started in the last year, since the H9 has a reverb that I like in it. So the majority of the time I use the H9 for reverb, but giving a certain amount of depth to what I'm playing using effects is kind of important. And I'm trying to be better about programming this stuff that way for these kinds of sounds. I mean, sometimes you get a sound that's really important that you play a certain way, and I'll always have that kind of dialed in. But in general, it's like you watch someone like Pete Thorne go through his sounds, and he's got like all these different delays, or Sean Tubbs or someone like that, and I get it. That's part of why they sound so good. For me, I've never had the patience to really program everything to that depth, but as part of my big pedal board renovation, I'm kind of since I got nowhere to be for the next couple months, I'm actually going to spend a lot of time dialing that stuff in, like the grown-up guitar players. All right, so back to the chord things. If I'm playing this and I don't have a capo, and I'm trying to, oops, one of these guys, there we go, and I'm just trying to get the sound as much as possible. All right, in a trio, I'm trying to use as much of the instrument as, I'm trying to get a lot of sound in there, right? If I am playing in a bigger group, maybe I'm just, maybe I'll do something a little smaller. I'll play partial chords or rootless chords, or shell voicings without the roots, maybe is one way to look at it. Or I'm playing, making sure I'm getting the third and the seventh, or just the triad in there and letting somebody else fill the space. It really depends on the setting I'm playing in. I play in trios most of the time. I have to occupy a lot of space. So for me, a lot of times it's this sort of thing. All right, and I'm not getting in the way of anybody with what I'm doing. All right, so the first part of the chord progression here, A flat, E flat with the G in the bass, F minor, and then D flat, E7. This is actually leading into the verse. Each morning I get up, I die a little, can't barely. And they've got it, stand on my feet. So B flat to E flat. I'm really thinking, I like to hear the dominant sound in there. You don't necessarily have to. You can go B flat and E flat there. Bar chords are helpful. Take a look in the mirror and cry. Here there's definitely the dominant chord. Lord, what you doing to me? I like using this cowboy chord a lot. I'm not certain why. I just if I want to hear a dominant chord and I'm going back to the one chord there, I kind of like that. Partially, I think, because there's a little continuity of that note right there, and you're not going and not moving up to there. You're not resolving up. You're actually having to go down. So here, right, that's actually just a little bit smoother voice leading. I spent all my years in believing you. Can't hurt. Lord, somebody, can anybody find me? That major 7 chord, that is kind of important in this. As long as you're not playing with a lot of distortion, I would play the major 7 that way. And then they don't write it this way. So you've got this E flat 7 chord. On piano, most piano players, and I'm pretty sure that he's probably doing something like this, where he's basically playing a D flat chord with an E flat in the bass. Right, so you got the triad right here, and then that note, and that really functions as basically the 5 chord in the key of A flat. This basically gives you like a E9 or E flat 9 in this key, and then if you bring this one note up, you're getting the suspension. So it's a little bit more modern sounding, a little bit more piano sounding. It'll probably sound cool with the effects on it. Somebody love. Right. They change here in the music. It says, and I probably don't know if I would catch this if I was doing this by ear, but A flat with a G in the bass, which is a 3rd inversion chord. F minor 7 or F minor. Right. So if I'm arranging this part for guitar, I might, instead of playing the A flat here, because I've got this bass line, and it's going against what is essentially this A flat triad right here. Alright, I could actually just keep that going, and that way it fills space nicely. And then I've got the D flat, and then my E flat chord, or my E flat sus chord. Okay, so I'm going to stop just for a second. If you guys have questions, I'm kind of going through this stuff quickly. I'm not entirely certain I'm breaking it down enough with enough clarity. So if you got questions, if I'm leaving you behind, let me know. But I like this idea. So basically, it's like my first fingers of capo. If you don't have big hands, this might be a little bit challenging. So we get to the next verse. I work hard every day of my life. I work until I ache my bones at the end. I take home all on my own. I get down on my knees and I start to pray till we're starting E flat tears. Alright, that B flat 7 over D, you do that a couple different ways. I'm here on the E flat chord, so my first thought is here's B flat and there's a D. So I might do it like that way. You could E flat, B flat over D, because that just kind of gives you this this movement like that. Once again, I can kind of pull some of the stuff off because of the size of my hands. So if you can't, you just got to find other ways. Ultimately, we need to hear the B flat or B flat 7 chord, and the bass player should be getting the D as well. And that's the thing to remember about any chord with the slash. Remember that the part to the left, that's the chord, and the part to the right is the bass note. It's nice to be able to add the bass note into the voicings, but not necessary if you're playing with a bass player. All right, so... Hey, look, you know what? There's my friend, the E flat 11 chord. That's the thing I was just talking about. Can anybody find me somebody to love? Right? So that's what my ears were telling me earlier, and it's probably because I've heard the song since I was a little kid, even though I've never learned how to play it. But that's the sound right there. On the bridge... in the original recording, there's kind of there's like this kind of driving feel to it. So I would probably be thinking every day, try and try. G flat. All right, and then there's the where it goes from the G flat to the G flat minor. It's almost like the song changes keys. All right, it goes for the bridge into the key of D flat major, so it goes into the 4 chord as its new key. So then that's why you're getting this, and then this guy here is the 4 chord in the new key, and then that becomes the minor 4 chord, just like we see in a lot of Beatles tunes. All right, and then we have the recovery back up into A flat, because then we go B flat 7. I got no common sense. I got nobody's belief. And they got this. What is this? A flat over E flat. Okay, yeah, I would probably play that, right? And that is very similar to to our 11 chord there, right? So instead of playing D flat over, well, A flat over E flat. I'd have to listen back to it. This is the Find Me Somebody to Love part. Oh, that's the solo. It's actually very much like Lights by Journey. All right, so I'm gonna pause for a second. You guys have questions or statements about that? Yeah, I mean, sometimes if you're an adult, especially a male adult playing guitar, this stuff really isn't as hard as it seems. You just have to be able to utilize your hands a little bit more effectively. And part of this is thumb placement. All right, the other part, like when I'm playing something like a really wide stretch, like here's F major 7 across 5 frets, right? So I'm basically barring with my pinky on the 5th fret, and I'm playing the root down here. You know, my thumb has to be kind of centered behind in order to pull that off. Right, that's the whole kind of like the whole Alan Holdsworth kind of deal there. All right. Thumb placement. It almost always for adults comes down to making sure that your thumb is not all the way off to the side or to the left of your index finger. It needs to be kind of either between these two guys or over a little bit, especially when you're reaching. And then when you do the reach, really wide reaches and stretches happen between the first 2 fingers. You can't reach with the pinky because your pinky is already at a disadvantage because it's shorter. All right, so you try and support the mass of the hand here and then get the stretch happening here. If you notice, I do this like every once in a while. I'll line my pinkies up, and then you see the difference between the reach or the stretch of my hands, right? My hand is used to doing this, right? So the reality is that everything here that allows me to stretch laterally is very stretched out on this hand, and not so much on this hand, doing my jazz hands here, right? So like I can make almost a straight line from here to here. This hand, it's more of a V, right? Because this hand holds a pick, and it types, and it opens doors. This hand, basically, I'm always stretching. So even if I'm playing like single note lines, right? So there's a pentatonic thing, and one of my favorites is that whole Van Halen thing from Beat It, right? And he's playing, and keep in mind, Eddie Van Halen's a little guy, right? But he's playing 12, 15, and 19, I think. Maybe 12, 15, 20. So I think in Beat It, he's doing this. All right. And you think, wow, that's a really wide stretch. But the reality is everything's closer together here. All right. And that main reach happens here. All right. So that's not as crazy as it seems. But you can't just do it right off the bat, right? A lot of this happens because over time, as you're learning to use your hands more effectively on the instrument. Oops. I'm actually so used to reaching out. I totally played the scale wrong. All right. It loosens up, right? It just muscle. And I'd hazard a bet that the majority of us are at least middle-aged people, so muscles don't don't stay flexible unless you're using them like that. So, all right. So, questions? Let's. I'm gonna kind of look through this real quick. But those are, I mean, basically, once you get the main parts of a song like that figured out, and a lot of it just comes down to, let's figure out how much space a part needs, and how I'm going to get that using, like, what kind of chords. All right, and maybe I want to use a capo, maybe I don't. Maybe I just want to retune an instrument. Maybe I don't have someone who's managing or wrangling my instruments, so it's me, just one guitar. So I end up playing, I've talked about this one in the past too, which is the fact that if I'm, we'll do Want You Back by Jackson 5, right? And the original song's in A flat. So this is one for Terry, actually, right? And one guy's playing this, and the guy's going, there's multiple parts there, right? Well, in the key of A flat, which we were just playing Somebody to Love in, all right, that's really, oh, darling, give me one more chance. No, not many adult men can sing up there, especially after singing a full night's worth of, Green Day and shit. All right, so the options are you find a key that works, or you capo it, or you do something else, right? So in that song, in the case of that song, the key that works for our singer in that band, the bass player, is in the key of C major. So instead of where it's supposed to sound, we've got which, I mean, it sounds a little weird, but people get the idea. We also don't have the piano and all the other instrumentation, right? So he's playing the bass line, and I'll usually start off with the octave, but this guy here, that sounds pretty cool because where it's at. Up here. All right, in this register, it's a little thin. It's not the greatest thing. All right, I'll try and add the other parts in as I can. So I'll usually do the first half of the verse. Once I had you to myself, didn't want you around. Those pretty faces always made you stand out in a crowd. I don't remember the words. All right, and then because we're in the key of C, I'm really able to go, oh, darling, give me one more chance. Show you that I love you. Back to your heart. Oh, darling, I was blind to let you go, baby. Won't you please me back to your heart? Does this part, and this is the big piano part. All right, but being able to kind of move between the different registers of the guitar, and here, because it's the chorus, and I've got the open strings, what happens is that I've got this big sound. Dynamically and texturally, it's different than that part for the piano bit in between, and then even on the verses. On that part for the verses, it brings everything smaller, tighter, and then also these parts, they can pop out a little bit better. Because they're not octaves, they're basically triads or diads, thirds, depending on which part I'm playing. They're sized differently. So much of figuring out guitar parts has to do with the size of the sound, to me. This C, that's useful. This C is useful. That C, they're all useful differently. You just got to figure out what's going to be the most effective in the space you're trying to fill musically. Okay. How are you guys doing? Questions? I'll pause it for a second. I always feel like I'm rambling on Saturdays. I actually haven't tried this guitar with any of these pedals. So here's the. Besides being out of tune, these strings are totally shot. Cool. All right. Trying to think of other piano tunes. So we'll do Is she really going out with him? Was it Joe Jackson? That song, it's interesting. If I remember correctly, that is pretty keyboard heavy. And the guitar part in the beginning is just the guitar part. Like if I'm playing the verse. You just playing the backbeats. But when it gets to the chorus, is she really going out with him? She really gonna take him home tonight? She really going out with him? Am I playing that right? Yeah, I'm totally drawing a blank on the song. It's been kind of a year. But here's another one where I use that instead of playing an E flat chord, I'll play that 11 E flat 11 chord. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, A flat's just not anybody's favorite key to play in guitar, but it exists, and sometimes people need to sing there. I mean, Brian May got to figure it out, so so why not? Okay, I'm gonna. You guys have any other questions or anything like that? I'm in a little. It's just been a weird week. We go back to teaching at the conservatory this week, so I've been picking out music for my big band. It's like trying to figure out what a bunch of middle school kids are going to be able to play after out of the Duke Ellington ouvroir. So, that's that song. I'm trying to think like what other songs that we do that I typically have to rearrange. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we play is. Oh, okay. So, okay, here's kind of a funny one. Bon Jovi, "Living on a Prayer." Right. Typically, I'll play it with a pretty heavy sound. And in the beginning, the bass player is doing this. Right, so I'll leave him alone, and you got this. That part is in the chord. Alright, but when it gets to the verse, the piano part is what's important. So I'll bring the volume down a little bit on the guitar. So that's the Johnny used to work on the docks. So I'm just playing the E flat chord. And if I remember correctly, the piano part goes to like a B minor right there. Alright, and with less distortion this actually works, but I'll finger pick it. And then I can open up the sound playing the longer chords. And then... Alright, so I get all this texture which actually shapes the sound of the song. And then bring up the volume. We gotta hold on to what we've got. It doesn't make a difference if we make it or not. We got each other, and that's a lot for love. Hey there, whoa, living on a prayer. Take my hand, we'll make it, I swear. Whoa, living on a and then it closes up because you get into the bass line. All right, and then just changing the right hand attack actually makes a difference for the next. All right, and just lightening it up. I typically don't use this much distortion when I play this song, so it's a little weird. It's not reacting the way I want to. All right, I don't know. What do you guys? I'll open up a little bit more for questions and things like that, and then I'll probably go after that. So next week, probably on Monday, I'll be getting the stuff to build cables for my pedal board, and then I'm gonna actually start putting all the stuff back together properly, and programming and having some fun with that. So there'll be a bunch of stuff online about seeing whether or not I can solder a whole bunch of cables, 50 or 60 ends, and I'm doing some kind of different stuff with this. The one thing I discovered about the H9, let's give you guys a little, oops. So the Eventide H9 has a thing, it's got 2 inputs and 2 outputs. And one of the things that you can do with it is you can actually, like, if I went into it at the beginning of my pedal board before everything, I can go into input 1 and come out of input 1 and then go into everything else. And then at the end of the signal path, go back into input 2 and then come out of input 2 to go out to the amp. And then within the programming of the sounds, I can either make the pedal pre or post, which means that I can actually say, hey, I want this to be before all the other pedals using input and output 1, or I can make it after all of them, which is cool because there's a lot of the time where I just use it for reverb, but then I've got sounds like synth sounds and things like that. Where actually, how do I change the sounds on this thing with oops. It's kind of sad. I know how to use this thing with my iPad, but not so much. Oh, this is messed up. All right. But like things like harmonizers and things like that, I like to put before. So that's gonna be kind of part of the grand experiment is when I want to use my harmonizer and synth sounds versus when I'm going to just use it as a reverb. There's also a great tape delay in that, which is way better than the timeline. And there's a new chorus, and there's a couple things in there that I like that I'm gonna give a try. But having the ability to do that and have it outside of my loopers is pretty neat. So that's one of those things I think I'm gonna experiment with a little bit. And then everything else, I'm just adding a couple of these overdrive pedals. I originally got the Blue Note for my small pedal board, but I like it so much, I'm actually just going to put it in the big board, and I'm going to get rid of the Emerson M drive will end up in my small board, and then I like the Archer, which I've never actually used with the Les Paul. So there's some other things going on. I haven't had a good heavy distortion in a while, so that's what the Riot's going to be doing for me, which will be fun. So, all right, guys. I think I'm gonna wrap it up a little bit early. I kind of exhausted my. Hopefully, this was helpful for you. And then hang on a second here. If you have questions, make sure that you throw them in the comments below. I don't really get too many questions that way. Everyone always asks me during the private lessons instead. But go ahead and do that. Wednesday, we're going to look at Tempted by Squeeze, which, that one shouldn't be too hard either. And then that's pretty much it. If you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. Please hit the like button. Hit the notification thing so you know when we go live. And that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys later on. Have a good one.